For the last few years, I've been finding it harder and harder to justify upgrading my Apple Watch. Every time a new one comes out, it's cool, yeah, it's nice, it's got new features, but I mean, there's just not that much exciting about it. Now, don't get me wrong, of course there are new features every year, but there's not that many that are, you know, kind of paradigm shifting or change the way that you actually use the watch. Really what we see is just kind of refinements. It's faster, it looks a little better. Like, there's not that much of a difference in how you actually use the watch, which is what I think the Apple Watch's biggest problem is right now. To figure out why, I think we have to look back at the beginning. This is the first Apple Watch. And as I look back on it, I realize this is a very different Apple product from really any other that Apple has announced. Typically, when Apple releases a new product category, the iPhone for example, it's very new, it's very fresh, but it's also very basic. It doesn't do that much. It has a core set of functionality that it does really well, but it doesn't do that much. The iPhone, when it first came out, didn't even do MMS, for crying out loud. Like, it was very basic, and compared to the competition, it was actually lacking in many, many ways. Even to this day, there's things that the competition does that the iPhone can't do, and Apple keeps adding to it every single year. But when Apple announced the watch, it was a little bit different. Apple really tried to throw every single thing they could at it. It already had an app store, it had different watch faces, it had a whole new interface, of course. It had universal watch bands, it had different materials and different sizes. It had exercise tracking, it had notifications. I mean, everything that you can think of for a smartwatch, the first watch already did. I mean, the very first Apple Watch had almost all the same core features that the brand new shiny Series 6 has. Apple dumped all the new features up front and slowly refined them, tweaked them, and actually made them functional and useful year over year, rather than start basic with, say, notifications and fitness tracking and work your way up. They did the complete opposite. And honestly, at first, that made the Apple Watch kind of a painful experience. It was a little confusing to use. It did too much. You not only had to learn a new interface, but you had to interface with the iPhone, you had to use these different apps. It was also slow. It was a clunky experience, but year over year, they refined it. They didn't really add much, but they just made it better. But that did mean that if you had one of those early watches, honestly, it did pretty much everything you wanted it to, so you didn't feel the need to upgrade all that quickly. There wasn't something brand new every year that for a mass scale made you want to run out and get the new watch, unlike with the iPhone. Better camera, crazy design, huge screens. There was year over year improvements that most people wanted to get even if they couldn't, but you just don't really get that with the Apple Watch. Now, before we continue, I think it's important to address where I'm coming from here. I'm looking at this through Apple's perspective. Obviously, as the consumer, me, you, everyone else, you wouldn't really be expected to upgrade every single year. That's kind of silly. But if you look at it from Apple's perspective, they should make me not upgrading as hard as possible. Every single year, that should be their goal. Get me to buy a new one. And lately, they just haven't been doing that. The upgrades haven't been that exciting. Obviously, we have seen changes, but not that many that actually change how you use the device. You know, getting software updates, tweaks, and refinements are great, but they don't change how I use the product, which I think is what really pushes those upgrades. And from Apple's perspective, again, that's what they should be wanting. Now, of course, that's not to say there are never new features. We have seen a few along the years. We've got a bigger screen with the Series 4, but I think one of the biggest ones before that was LTE. This was kind of a paradigm shifting, well, maybe that's a strong word, but it was a big deal in how you actually use the Apple Watch. Now, of course, there are a lot of people that don't really care about LTE, and that's fine, but it was the first time that we saw the Apple Watch go from this kind of dinky iPhone accessory to its own product. It's something that could stand on its own, well, for the most part. For me, I use LTE multiple times a week. The biggest one is when I'm out here at the beach, either I'm going surfing, going swimming, or just out and about, and I don't want to carry my phone. For one, I use it to lock my car so that I don't have to carry my phone or my keys. If I'm in the water, I don't want to do that, and most of the time I'm by myself, and that's just a really cool feature that LTE enables. Plus, when I'm out there, I can keep track of the time, not that different than a normal watch, but I can also, in case of an emergency, contact someone or someone can contact me. That's one thing that I wouldn't really be able to do any other way out in the water. Obviously, this is a very specific use case to me, but again, it illustrates that LTE was a big feature that changed how you use the product, and that's not something that we see all that often with the watch. Now I get it, LTE might not be all that important for some people, but the same could be said for ECG or blood oxygen monitoring. These are all excellent features that are amazing to have on your wrist. It's pretty impressive that you can do that, but these are all tailored towards, very specific use cases. So again, year over year, there isn't that push to just go out and upgrade. And I think that's further represented with the Series 6. It's a refinement on a refinement. The Series 4 was a pretty decent upgrade with a big screen, but the Series 5 just kind of tweaked that, and the Series 6 is tweaking that a little bit more. There isn't that much different year over year. And again, that doesn't mean the Series 6 is bad. It's very good. I can confidently say it's the best smartwatch out there, and all the refinements and changes make it the best watch for the most people. So this is, it's interesting. The Apple Watch isn't a bad product, so there really isn't an issue here, but I'm just trying to think, how can I personally get excited about the Apple Watch again? Because I'm just not. And I think to answer that, we need to look elsewhere in Apple's portfolio. And I think the iPad is the best example. The iPad was kind of in the same funk. It was not that exciting. It was just an iPad. The one you had did pretty much everything the new one did, and there was nothing all that excited, and I didn't want to upgrade. But then Apple released the iPad Pro and the new design, excellent hardware, Apple Pencil. There was new features. There's differences than just a big screen that ran iOS. It made the iPad exciting again. I never thought in a million years that I would be someone who wanted to use an iPad Pro as my main device, but here we are, and it's because it's a very fun and interesting product. It gets me excited for different possibilities, whereas the watch just doesn't. But I do think that is something that can happen with the Apple Watch, and I think we're actually kind of starting to see it here. Apple just announced the Apple Watch SE, which is basically the Series 4, but at a cheaper price. And I think lowering the entry price means more people who don't have an Apple Watch will be enticed to actually get one, and they'll be getting a good watch at that. So now Apple has that, but I think it's time to focus on that new high end. Give me the iPhone 11 Pro Max of the Apple Watch world. I think there's a few things they could do. I think first and foremost would be a radically different design. If you look year over year, the watch basically looks the same. And that's great for certain things like watch band compatibility, and of course you want the OS to run on all these different watches, but I think Apple of all companies could figure out a way to make the watch look fresh and new and exciting again, while also keeping all of those other benefits. I know a lot of people want Apple to take the round approach. Personally, I don't really care about that, but it would be very interesting to see Apple finally do that. We've heard rumors in the past of Apple doing this. We've seen mock-ups of what that could look like. It would be cool, and it would definitely look more like a normal watch. And I think for those people that are really holding out because they don't like the look of the Apple Watch, which there's a lot of people out there like that, getting kind of a more normal looking watch would be a good way to get those people in. Another one would be drastically better battery life. Now, again, I don't know how they would do this, maybe make it a little bit thicker, or if they do make it round, make it a little bit bigger and then you can fit more battery inside. But right now I can get, 2 days pretty comfortably with the watch, but if I could go 3, 4, maybe even a week on the Apple Watch, maybe give it an ultra low power mode that it goes into at night if I'm doing sleep tracking or something, figure out a way to extend that battery life as far as possible. That would be another killer feature if I knew I didn't have to charge this thing every single night. Also, I think we're almost to the point where the watch could be truly standalone, live on its own, not have to be tethered to an iPhone at all. And we almost saw the first hints of that with family setup for the Apple Watch, where you can set up multiple watches for different people with one iPhone. I think take that next step, make it its own truly standalone device. I don't know how big the market for this would be, but I know for me personally and other people in my situation, being able to wear an Apple Watch that could get iMessage and could be in that Apple ecosystem, but also, carry an Android phone so I can live in both worlds, that'd be very useful and it'd be something that I would do. I don't know how big that market is, but I think making it a standalone device is intriguing at the very least. And I don't think they have to do all of these things at once. This could be a year over year or every other year improvement and would make the Apple Watch exciting again. It would make me want to rush out and actually get one because it changes how I would actually use the watch. We're kind of getting to the point with technology where it's like upgrades for upgrades' sake. They upgrade it every year, but honestly, it doesn't really need to. And then it goes for the phone, that goes for the watch, it even goes for the iPad. But I think the difference is that with those other categories, they are still exciting. They get different revamps, they get different refreshes, and there's something to see there, something to experience. The Apple Watch is just the same old thing every year, and while it's very good, it's the best, it's just so hard to get excited about. The Apple Watch is honestly its own worst enemy because it's so good, the competition really isn't there, and there isn't much that Apple is getting pushed on. I mean, everyone seems to be happy with their Apple Watch, so why would they do anything else? I hope that changes because I really love this thing. I just want to be excited again.